What's going on, everyone? Let me tell you about something that absolutely consumed the conversation on NBA Today this afternoon, that has the entire Warriors community experiencing a mixture of excitement about the signing news and absolute confusion about roster construction and rotation management. I'm talking about the kind of news day where multiple roster moves are happening simultaneously, the type of situation where you're signing new players while others are returning from injuries, and everyone's wondering how the hell all these pieces are going to fit together. This isn't just about the Warriors signing Seth Curry to a contract that everyone expected. This is about what that move signals regarding future trades, about this organization's roster-building philosophy, and about whether Golden State is finally going to address their desperate needs for size and rebounding by bringing in someone like Andre Drummond from the Philadelphia 76ers. So buckle up, because what I'm about to share from today's NBA Today broadcast isn't just about one roster move. It's about organizational philosophy, about being trapped in the second apron, about floor spacing versus physical presence, and about whether the Warriors are finally going to admit that their small ball approach needs some serious adjustments. Warriors Nation, I need you right now. That like button is how we grow and reach more fans. 1 second, 1 click changes everything. If you bleed orange and blue, prove it. Smash that like button. Let's build this together. All right, here's the situation that had the entire NBA Today panel absolutely perplexed this afternoon. And I'm talking about veteran basketball analysts who've covered the Warriors for years, but still found themselves genuinely confused by the roster construction decisions happening right now. The main story that emerged wasn't just that Seth Curry finally signed with Golden State on a deal for the remainder of the season, although that obviously got discussed extensively. It was about the timing of that move and what it signals about the state of the Warriors roster and future trades that are coming. When you really break down what's happening here, when you see a team signing another guard to a roster that's already incredibly guard-heavy, when you consider that DeAnthony Melton is also returning from injury soon, it becomes impossible not to wonder what the hell the front office is doing and whether they're finally going to address their obvious front-court need. Let me start by giving you the full context that NBA Today was establishing at the beginning of the broadcast, because understanding the Warriors' salary cap restrictions and roster situation is absolutely essential for grasping why all these moves are happening now and what they might mean for the future. The Warriors are hard-capped at the second apron, which means they have massive restrictions on what they can do with their roster. They could only keep 14 players entering the season to create enough breathing room to eventually add Seth Curry in that vacant 15th roster spot. The analysts were discussing how Seth Curry was on the practice squad during training camp, but was waived before the season started specifically due to these financial constraints, and how everyone knew he'd eventually return once the Warriors had the flexibility to bring him back. But here's what really has the NBA Today analysts engaged about the broader roster situation. And this is where Seth Curry's signing connects to the Andre Drummond speculation and the Warriors' need. The panel was breaking down the Warriors' current depth chart and pointing out how all their best players, all the guys who are really producing this season, are guards. You've got Steph Curry, obviously. You've got Brandon Podziemski, who's been good. You've got Moses Moody, who's taken steps forward. You've got Gary Payton II, who was phenomenal in the most recent game against the Pelicans. You've got Buddy Hield, who despite being frustrating still gets minutes. You've got Pat Spencer getting time, and now you're adding another guard in Seth Curry, while DeAnthony Melton is about to return from injury. The analysts were screaming about how this doesn't make sense unless the Warriors are planning to make a major trade soon. The show dove deep into what specifically Seth Curry brings to the table and why the Warriors would want to add him despite already having so much guard talent. And here's where you really see his specific skill value becoming clear. Seth Curry has been an elite three-point shooter throughout his entire career. It doesn't matter what team he's on or how many minutes per game he's playing, he's simply a high-volume, high-percentage three-point specialist. The NBA Today panel was showing his numbers from last season, where he shot 46% from the three-point line on 3 attempts per game, discussing how that's exactly the type of reliable floor spacing the Warriors need, especially when guys like Buddy Hield have been inconsistent, shooting only 31% from 3 this season, despite being hired specifically as a shooter. What the NBA Today crew kept emphasizing, and I think this is absolutely critical for understanding why Curry's signing signals bigger moves coming, is that the Warriors now have too many guards and not enough size or physical presence in the front court. The analysts were going through team statistics showing how Golden State is ranked 21st in the NBA in rebounding, which makes sense because they're playing undersized every single possession, how they're in the bottom half of the league in blocks per game, how their field goal efficiency is 45%, which is 23rd in the NBA, because they're not getting enough shots close to the rim. The panel was making the argument that these problems are not going to be solved by adding more guards. You need to make a trade to get size, and that's exactly the type of move that Seth Curry's signing makes more likely. The panel spent extensive time analyzing the Andre Drummond situation and why he makes so much sense as a trade target for the Warriors, despite not fitting perfectly into their traditional system. And this sparked really interesting debates about adaptation and necessity versus philosophy. Drummond is currently with the 76ers, making $5 million this season on an expiring contract. He's one of the best rebounders in NBA history, having won 4 rebounding titles in his career. He provides physicality and size in the paint that helps against dominant big men in playoff matchups. The NBA Today analysts were discussing how Drummond isn't the type of player you'd typically think fits with Golden State's style of play, but needs have changed, and sometimes you have to adjust your philosophy to address obvious weaknesses. What I found particularly fascinating during today's NBA Today discussion was when they started connecting all these roster moves to the Jonathan Kuminga trade speculation and how everything might be related. The analysts were discussing how Kuminga signed an extension that includes a trade restriction until January 15th, how there's been weird body language and tension between Kuminga, Steve Kerr, and now apparently with the Pelicans bench too, how the Trey Murphy rumors from New Orleans keep intensifying every day. The NBA Today panel was suggesting that maybe the Warriors are stockpiling guard assets to use in trade packages, that maybe Seth Curry isn't meant to be a long-term rotation player, but rather a trade piece, or someone who plays limited minutes, while bigger moves materialize. The show also explored Philadelphia's motivations for potentially moving Drummond and why the 76ers might be willing to part with a productive backup. And this is where the fit makes sense for both sides. Philadelphia has Joel Embiid when healthy as their starting center. They've added young bigs through the draft that they want to develop, and Drummond at $5 million represents salary that could be moved to create more financial flexibility or avoid luxury tax penalties. The NBA Today analysts were discussing how Drummond might also want more guaranteed minutes than he's getting in Philly, that going to the Warriors where he could potentially see 15-20 minutes per game as a backup centered front court option would be appealing to him, and that there would be less cultural adjustment since he's played in big market situations before. What really struck me during the NBA Today analysis was when they started discussing fan frustrations with Steve Kerr and his rotation management and whether adding more players is really going to solve those problems. The panel was pointing out how Kerr has been forced to play Draymond Green at center tons this season due to the lack of size, how fans joke on social media about how if the Warriors trade for Trey Murphy, he'll probably end up playing center too, how the positionless basketball philosophy has become problematic when you literally don't have enough big players. The analysts were debating whether Drummond would actually solve these issues, or if it's just a band-aid solution that doesn't address deeper systemic issues with how this roster is constructed. One aspect that got really interesting discussion was the comparison between different guards on the Warriors roster and who should actually be getting minutes once both Seth Curry and DeAnthony Melton are available. The NBA Today panel was going through production statistics showing how Gary Payton II has been phenomenal defensively, how Moses Moody has shown growth, how Brandon Podziemski, despite some ups and downs, still provides versatility, how Buddy Hield is the most frustrating player to watch when things aren't working, but still takes significant shot volume. The analysts were debating whether Kerr is actually going to adjust his rotations or if he's just going to stick with his usual patterns regardless of who's on the roster. Listen, after watching the entire NBA Today segment this afternoon about Seth Curry's signing and how it connects to the Warriors' broader roster construction and Andre Drummond speculation, I'm absolutely convinced that Golden State needs to make a major move for size before that January 15th Kuminga trade restriction, or they're going to waste another season with Steph Curry still playing at an elite level. Drummond makes perfect sense as a low-cost, low-risk target who addresses immediate rebounding and physical presence needs without costing significant assets beyond maybe an end-of-roster guard and a second-round pick. Yes, he's not the type of player you typically associate with the Warriors system, but sometimes you have to adapt your philosophy to address obvious weaknesses rather than keep doubling down on what isn't working. If they can get Drummond cheaply while also potentially moving Kuminga for Trey Murphy or some other two-way wing, suddenly this roster looks way more balanced and capable of competing with the top teams in the West that have both size and skill.